TV poker has made us all think that coolers happen all the time and you're supposed to get aces once in orbit and all that type of thing. Coolers do happen sometimes in tournaments. It's not as frequent. Often they're heads up. But what we have today, Jonathan, what we have today is what I would call a three-way cooler. But a cooler amount of chips might not go in the pot. We got to find out why. This is an interesting one. That's why we got to break it down. It's why it was suggested on Twitter by Philip Routhard and the Twitter Master. If you have a suggestion, tweet at us, include a YouTube link and a timestamp.
So to set the stage, this hand took place in the PCA. There's 45 left. It was done in January 2019, so it's pretty recent. And 45 left means the money is approaching. I mean, they're in the money, but the big money is, a ways away, not that far. You can see the final table from here. And these guys are all very, very aware of it. And we've got some big names as well. Marc-Andre Ladouceur, who's a former November Niner. Simon Dedman, who has over $3 million in winnings. And another guy named Campagna, who we don't know as much about.
I mean, his name is like somewhat long. It's a little bit of a
So
big
that's
name.
impressive right there, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, also important is Nitrogen Sports Poker Room. They're not going to cooler you or something.
In life.
In life.
Maybe,
they're gonna swaddle you and make you feel warm and cozy because Nitrogen Sports Poker Room is a Bitcoin-only poker site. The most important thing about that is that Nitrogen Sports Poker Room gives you your money fast when you withdraw, and I mean 90 minutes. If you bink a tournament and you want your money, you can have it in 90 minutes. Nobody else does that. Not even sites that use Bitcoin. Nitrogen does. You got to use the link in the description when you sign up, though, or you don't get access to our exclusive Poker Guys events.
Yeah, and that includes our monthly tournament, which happens at the end of every month. They guarantee 1,000 buy-ins to this thing. We usually get like 80 some odd people in there, which means there's a massive overlay every single time. That's right, over 900 buy-in overlay. If you don't know what an overlay it is, look it up, and then you're going to want to play. Use the link in the description when you sign up. We'll see you on Nitrogen.
Sure will let you drink.
Simon Dedman is open to 23,000.
Bit of a decision here for Campana. Does he elect to 3-bet, get it in for the 34 bigs, or just flat? I think most of the time you're just going to want to flat here. He does elect to do that. You're not always crazy about 3-bet calling off in this spot. So many chips. Plays kind of nice, as a lot of your flats from these positions are going to be sort of suited Broadway hands. Maybe something like king, queen off. So to have a hand as strong as nines worked in there where you're doing pretty great on low boards. Wow, that is an pretty action flop for all three guys.
Yeah, so we've got Ladouceur with trip kings, Dedman with the flush draw. Campagna maybe feeling his nines are strong. Action check to the pre-flop aggressor.
Either option, I think, is okay here for Dedman. You know, he can elect to c-bet and hope to get through both of his opponents. Campana does have some kings in his range. And he does get to disguise that flush draw. But at the same time, if he bets, he can just sometimes take it down, and that's oh so sweet. It's just jack high.
So 22,000 into 79,000. Campagna calls. Now, how does Marc-Andre play this, Griffin?
Well, this is a bit interesting for Mark, you know. He knows that he has the best hands so often. He also knows that it's hard for him to be really bluffing when he check raises here, simply because the two ranges he's up against can very easily include a king, so it doesn't really look bluffy. So I think we're going to see a call a lot. You know, he doesn't want to just get all his chips in here just because he has three-of-a-kind kings. Now, Dedman, you can see with the little... Oh, my goodness!
Oh, wow.
The literal biggest action card you can possibly imagine.
You don't want to see.
Completely flips the script everywhere. Campana was nearly dead.
Well, he had 8% equity. Now he's got 81% equity, turning a full house. Ladouceur still with trip kings. Deadman got there with his flush, but
And he's just about dead.
he's
Man.
drawing to a straight flush, right?
He is, and you know, with 2.5x pot but behind, I really would love to see a check here from Simon, and I'm not just saying that because we know, of course, that Campana has nines full. He knows that, you know, with Ladouceur very suspiciously overcalling here, that he's going to have some flush draws, some kings that may already be a boat.
There are hands where it's just the card. And obviously the 9 of spades in this hand was the most ultimate, craziest card possible on the turn for these 3 players. Of course, Marc-Andre hates this card. The other 2 players like it. Marc-Andre still has a very strong hand. It checks through, which is pretty weird. Let's go back to the flop and talk about that for a second before we get to the check through. Where Deadman continues, he continues very small. It's a polarizing board. His opponents don't necessarily have to have any of it. The small continue is fine, and he's obviously going to call most check raises.
Oh, he just absolutely has to call most check raises anyway, depending on the sizing. And I think Campana is really obligated to call with 2 9s because he doesn't expect Marc-Andre is calling very often from the big blind as an overcall. Now, of course, Marc-Andre has to call when he has, you know, trip kings here in a reasonable kicker, even though his kicker is actually kind of no good if anyone else has a king in this hand based on the positions these guys are in. But still, Marc-Andre is really forced to call because Campana can have a hand like 2 9s or spades, and Deadman can really have anything. Right?
Yeah.
Deadman can be betting ace-queen here, ace-jack here, a whole bunch of stuff, 2 10s, who knows?
Well, I don't know if he's betting 2 10s. I don't know if Deadman's
Right.
betting his showdownable hands. I think the checking range for Deadman includes a lot of pocket pairs. Maybe even pocket aces is a check for Deadman on this board because I don't know if there's a ton of value in betting it. Maybe he would bet it though, just because he wants to have some more bets in his range. Now, Campana, his range, if he's a capable player, which we don't know much about Campana here, but if he's a capable player, he's not going to have many 1 pair 7s in his hand here when he calls initially. He's not going to really have 6 7 suited when Deadman opens with 34 blinds plus 1
Right.
too frequently, right? So Campana is supposed to have a hand like he has, 8s, 9s, 10s, something like that, a king or a spade draw. And then when he calls and Marc-Andre overcalls, Marc-Andre pretty much has to have a king or a spade draw. Because
Yes.
there is no other draw. He is never calling with just a 7 when there's a bet and a call here.
Right.
So he's either got a king or a spade draw. People's ranges are pretty well defined except for Deadman so far.
Yeah, and that's what makes this turn card so extra interesting and probably why it ultimately checks through. So Campana makes what he is certain is almost always the best hand, right? He's losing basically to quad kings only here.
Or if Marc-Andre has king 7 or king 9.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marc-Andre can have those things, but there aren't very many combos of king 9 left, right?
Right.
But king 7 there certainly is. Okay, but still he's got to feel very confident that he's got a very good hand at this point and certainly would have no plans on folding kind of almost no matter what, right?
Yeah, unless maybe another king came or a 7.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
But I'm saying on this turn anyway. Now the question for Campana is to bet or to check, and I think it's a tough spot.
Right. So a major question we're asking in this hand is, as Campana, when you're up against these really good players and you have a monster hand, even when it's a cooler, how do you get the most value possible?
Yeah.
We're wondering if Campana is going about it correctly so far. It's hard to say. Checking is probably an okay thing because when Campana bets on this card, it's crazy strong. Unless he's a complete fish, he has at least the nut flush when he bets, right? I mean, how can he have anything else?
Yeah, it's hard for him to have much else because, well, from Deadman's point of view, it's hard for him to
Yeah.
have much else, right? Because Deadman has the jack 10 of spades in his hand. So, and I think this is ultimately why Deadman maybe checks back, is he's concerned about the flushes that Campana actually has are problematic. Like he doesn't really have anything worse than the ace queen of spades here.
Right.
If he's got a flush, that's a real problem for Deadman. And so I think that's why he checks back. From Campana's point of view, when he bets, it is very strong. But the problem is, if someone else isn't strong, it's probably going to check through anyway.
If someone else isn't strong, they're not going to call the bet either.
Right, but if they are strong, like look, we have 2 strong opponents and it checks through. As Campana, we can make sure at least somebody, if they're strong at all, is going to be forced to call. We know as Campana that usually Marc-Andre has either trip kings or a flush right now.
Yeah.
So that's reasonably strong. A flush is going to call, trip kings is probably going to fold.
Marc-Andre is definitely folding his hand on the turn
Yes.
if Campana leads out with this action.
I agree.
For sure.
But if Marc-Andre had king, queen with the queen of spades, if Marc-Andre had a flush, he's not folding.
Right, that's true.
So those are pretty good hands to target. I don't know that this is the right move by Campania to check, but I'll admit it's a tough spot and a little confusing, especially in real time.
Right, because if you bet, it does look so crazy strong.
Of course
right?
it does.
Like, I mean, like I was saying, sure, it's weird to fold the 5-high flush if you're Marc-Andre, but Campania definitely has that beat, right? Like, for sure he has that beat if he bets. Like,
He does.
Almost every time.
He does, but I think Marc-Andre's still calling at least once with the 5-high flush. Now, looking at the actual hands, what we know is Marc-Andre would almost certainly fold when this card comes, but Simon Dedman would, of course, be forced to call, right?
Right.
He would have to call, even though he can't love it, but still he would absolutely have to call.
Campania was supposed to give value anyway. I mean, you would expect Dedman to bet the jack-high
That's
flush
true.
here. But what he's thinking is, like we were saying on the flop, Marc-Andre for sure has either trip kings or a flush now. Now, Marc-Andre's flushes can go lower, so maybe Dedman should try to give value from some of Marc-Andre's low flushes because he can have any flush out of the big blind. Campania's flushes, as Jonathan said, because Simon has the jack and 10 of spades, are basically only the ace-queen of spades if he's capable at all. He shouldn't really have any other spade combos.
Yeah.
And that's not a good hand to be up against if you're Simon Dedman. So you're just hoping that both players have trip kings if you're betting a lot of the time?
No, not at all. If you're Dedman, you're hoping Marc-Andre's got a worse flush and absolutely feels stuck to the pot.
Yeah, I guess there's that.
I think Dedman, I understand why Dedman checks. He's relatively short. He doesn't want to play an all-in pot right now with 45 left in this unbelievably big event, one of the biggest events on the calendar. So he's checking back, doing pot control, figures he can get value on the river. But I wonder if this is right. Like, I know, yes, you're losing some of Campania's range here, but you're beating so much of Marc-Andre's that has to continue against you, which is all the lower flushes, and Marc-Andre has so many of those. I don't know, man. I think he's probably supposed to bet.
Well, Marc-Andre is going to pay off on the river with those hands anyway.
That's true.
And Dedman is not going to get two more streets out of those hands. If
Depending
Marc-Andre
on-
has
depending
the
on
five,
what they are.
If Marc-Andre has the 5-4 of spades, he is not calling turn and river.
Okay, but if he's got the 7-8 of spades, he might.
No, he's not.
He might.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And so he just wants to get to showdown here. If he sees two checks here, he'll certainly put out a little bet. But right now, he is not feeling that great about his jack-high flush. And Ladisor, after seeing two checks,
I can't believe everyone checked the turn. So Campania with the full house, nines full of kings, first to act on the river. There's 145,000 in the middle.
and I genuinely think that this is going to get a pretty quick fold from Marc-Andre Ladisor. I know all the viewers back home must be thinking, but he has trip kings. Like, that's not, how does he take it and fold so easily? Marc-Andre is going to break down the ranges here and know that Campana shouldn't really have any bluffs into two people. A lot of the time, at worst, he's going to have a flush. And his king has just completely shrunken up. Now, what Dedman is going to do is incredibly difficult, because Campana's flushes will often include...
Marc-Andre's folded.
Have a flush.
And Dedman just calls.
Has he called yet? No, I don't
No.
think he has called yet.
Well, he's announcing his hand.
I don't necessarily think he will call. Campana's not going to bet over half pot here with just a king after three-way to the turn, I think. So what are his flush combinations? Think about the hands that he flatted from the small blind. He's going to have something like, oh, wow, he blocks. Yeah, it's so hard to fold. I mean, he blocks queen jack of spades and queen 10 of spades. He's
I mean,
gonna have
he
to call
kind of
there.
has to call there, Griffin, but the fact is he only lost 85,000 on the river.
So we see the conundrum played out here. Campania, he got a decent amount for his hand, but he went three ways against trips and a flush with the best hand in basically a super cooler, three-way super cooler, and it doesn't seem like he earned that many chips. Like, he didn't even get a full double up in this spot. It feels like it's so hard to squeeze it out of the orange against players like this, right? Like, Dedman is calling, but he's not happy. We'll talk about if Dedman should even be calling. Marc-Andre makes the easiest fold in the world with King 10. I mean, Marc-Andre just can't call here.
Yeah.
There's no way Campania is betting a worse hand than King 10 here, and he doesn't have any bluffs in his range the way the hand played out. So it makes tons of sense for Marc-Andre to fold. The question is, did Campania do this right? Should he have led the turn? Should he have check-raised the river? Should he have bet bigger on the river? Was there any way to get more value?
I'm not sure there was any way to get more value. I think betting the turn is the one way you can potentially get more value. I'm looking at the hands. I think Dedman may go call. I think mostly he's going to go call. It's possible he'll find a fold on the river
I don't know
anyway.
if he would go call.
I don't know. I don't know either.
I question him even calling on the river
I know.
without a turn bet, so
I agree.
I don't think he would go call.
Well, this is the really, truly interesting question.
Yeah.
Sure, I mean, Campania's got a hand. We know he's betting on the river. He sizes it up a bit. That makes a lot of sense. Of course, Marc-Andre folds, but now Dedmon's in the spot with a hand that looks like it absolutely has to call. But does it absolutely have to call?
Well, if he just sat down and he knows nothing about Campania, I think he has to call because it's possible, although there are only 45 left in the PCA, so the players are going to be generally pretty good. It's possible that Campania is the guy who's going to have fishy pre-flop ranges. Now, we've been assuming this whole time that Campania is not that guy, just because of the way he holds himself at the table and all these things. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe he's a guy who can show up with the 6-8 of spades and the 4-5 of spades and hands like that. If that's true, then it's an easy call for Dedmon. But if Campania has more traditional good ranges, when Dedmon opened pre-flop +1 with only 34 blinds, Campania's only going to have the ace-queen of spades for a flush.
It does seem like that's likely. Of course, he also has pocket sevens and pocket nines very reasonably here. The question I think Dedmon has to ask himself is, does he have other hands also? Because if you can't come up with other hands that he's betting here for value, I think you're screwed and kind of have to fold, even though this hand seems way too good to fold. So you have to ask yourself, can he have king-queen and decide to bet this river because it checked through and figure he's paying off anyway, so he's going to try and get called? I don't know that he can, because Dedmon can still have ace-king and Marc-Andre can still have a flush. So I don't know that he would actually bet a worse hand than a flush here. And if the best flush he can, the worst flush he can have is the ace-high flush. As Dedmon, maybe we're supposed to fold, which seems insane, and I can't imagine figuring that out in the moment, personally.
Right. Now, maybe Dedmon realizes that he's too high in his distribution to fold because he's going to have hands that are worse than a flush here. He's going to have plenty of trip kings in his range. I don't know if he's going to have pocket aces in his range. I don't know if he's going to bet that on the flop. He's certainly not going to call with a hand like pocket queens, I don't think. Aces would be the bottom, like maybe I'm going to call type of hand. And moving on, you get to the trip kings and then the flushes. So if you add all of those in the range there, then the flush is pretty high in the range.
Yeah.
Now the jack high flush is probably the lowest flush that Simon can have when he opens +1. So it's low in the flush distribution. He also has only quad kings and the full house is 9s and 7s probably for better hands. It's all very confusing. I don't know what he's supposed to do because everything in my exploitive heart tells me that I'm supposed to fold in Simon Dedmon's seat if Campania is a reasonable pre-flop player. But everything in my GTO heart tells me this hand is too good to fold even though I know I lose, which doesn't make any sense, actually.
I mean, it really comes down to, does Campania have any weaker hands for value and or bluffs here? Is Campania the kind of guy who might have, let's say, 7-8, once he gets overcalled on the flop, realize he's not beating Marc-Andre for sure. When it checks through the turn, thinks, I've got to take a shot here because I can't win, but maybe I can get everyone to fold. If Marc-Andre has trip kings, he's going to fold, and Dedmon's going to have to fold a huge amount of his range. I might even be ahead of him, but I don't know, and takes a shot with like a 7 or something. If he has 2 8s, is he going to take a shot? If he's ever taking a shot, okay, now calling again with the jack 10 of spades makes sense because we're so high up in the distribution.
But you need to
if
know,
he's never doing that, it's titchy.
And well, it's a PCA, so people come from all over the world to play this. They probably haven't played each other at all before this table.
Possibly.
So it'll be hard to know what type of player Campania is and if he's capable of that, which is why ultimately you use distribution as a crutch and assume jack high flush is a bit too high in the distribution. Got to call even though it feels real poopy.
Probably have to call. So both the turn and river had some weird decisions, I would say, both for Dedmon and Campania. Marc-Andre's got pretty straightforward decisions, pretty much throughout this entire hand.
Yep.
But these other guys, not so much. What do you think about Campania's decision to check the turn as opposed to lead the turn, which does look super strong, as Grant was pointing out, and then his decision to bet the river, which I think is kind of mandatory once it checks through? More interesting, really, is Dedmon's decision to check back the turn when he makes the jack-high flush, which I don't know if that's right, and then call on the river, which seems like it's maybe even wrong, but how can you actually fold? What do you guys think? Is this a fold for some of you? Why is it a fold? Let us know in the comments. We're looking forward to seeing what you have to say for sure.
This was a very complex hand. On its surface, it looks like a cooler, but it gets super complex.
Yeah.
And we went into some complexity here on the video. It was one of our more complex videos, but we have a podcast where we go probably 700% as complex.
Yeah.
If you really want to get deep into the nitty-gritty of every street, every decision, we let ourselves go for 10 minutes on a single person's check or bet on the podcast. It's a place to study, to learn, to have fun. The breakdown presented by the Poker Guys, you got to check it out.
Yeah, if you want to add something to your poker repertoire, that's the thing to add, we think anyway. Now, if you want to see another hand where someone has a really strong hand on the river, but it feels like all the signs are pointing for them to fold, we got one for you. It involves fan favorite Matt Berkey. It's called Matt Berkey and the the Bomb Pot Bluff-tacular.
It's a mouthful. It's a tough
Whatever,
one.
no one can do it. But click right up here to check it out. This, of course, includes our analysis as well, so a little free bonus for you.
Also, click or use your finger and tap on that little subscribe button.